What's up, guys? Welcome back to Creating Cash Flow, where today I have a special interview with an Airbnb host. He owns more than 60 long-term rentals in Columbus, Ohio, and he also just got into the short-term rental game on Airbnb, and he shares a lot of wisdom with us. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to show you Sean's listing. So he has a beautiful oak timber framed stone cabin that's 3,000 square feet right on the lake in upstate New York. You can see that he has 24 reviews, really high ratings, and it really is a cool property. And he'll talk about this more, but it's a one-of-a-kind property where it's located. It's right on the water. He also found out that this is a premier ice fishing location, which he had never been here in 25 years of owning this property. He had never been in the winter, but come to find out that he was sitting on a premier winter piece of real estate. If you want to check out this property and even book a night, I'll have a link down in the description below. But a huge thanks to Sean, and now to the interview. Do you mind giving a quick intro and how you got started in the short-term rental space?
Sure. I'm in my 50s and I guess you can call me an investor. I trade government bonds for a living. So I understand the financial markets. I understand the financing, kind of understand cash flows. So probably 25 years ago, I bought my first house in Ohio. And it was either that, buy a motorcycle or buy a house. And I ended up buying the house, and it turned out to be a great investment. And the key I have found, and subsequently I own a lot more real estate in Ohio, which is managed by my best friend, which again, very helpful having someone managing it on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of how I got it. This property, the one that you referenced from Airbnb, is the only one that I do on a short term. And this really is a function of it's a family house that is 400 miles away from me and any other my other relatives. And no one really uses it.
Yeah.
But I've been in the family for 50 years, and it's just been basically last year I kind of got sick of paying all the bills, and there's just been so much deferred maintenance. So I, grabbed pictures from relatives and put it on Airbnb, and amazingly very successful the first year. Very, very successful. So
Congratulations. That is amazing. And actually, I think that leads me to one of my first questions, which would be, you just said you had relatives and everybody sent in pictures from the property. What do you think makes a good listing because you had a lot of great pictures. And again, like I told you, I found your property because they have all of those headlines of like an OMG, the views, skiing, beaches. And when I looked up the views one, your property was a top hit for my location. And I was like, wow, that honestly does look beautiful. So you have some great pictures in there. I guess, what do you think has helped you with your success when it comes to your specific listing?
Well, there's definitely, even though a lot of relatives and my brother and sisters don't use the place, they love the place. So there's been a lot of work gone into making a lot of nice details. And my dad, when he built the house 25 years ago, made it an oak timber framed home with all stone facade. So again, incredibly unique. Up there, it's very north. It's right near the Canadian border in New York. So nights are absolutely gorgeous. There's not a cloud in the sky, and the stars are incredible. So just our pictures that were taken late at night, after dark, I should say, just it really made it pop. And again, the lighting, when we built the house, we were made a point of doing a lot of nice lighting. So it really makes the house pop.
Were you involved with building at all?
Surprisingly, no. The house, we've had the house in the family for 50 years, and my dad decided, again, without telling anyone, he built, there's been 3 houses on the property. The second one he built with my grandfather, just the 2 of them. But I can, building a house in the 70s between 2 guys that didn't know what they were doing. They used steel pipes, and there was so much corrosion in all those steel pipes, you couldn't even get water through them anymore. All the windows were fogged up, so it wasn't usable in the winter. So no, he took it on a whim, had it torn down, and he had a concept of what he wanted, and he had the oak timber frame shipped in from the state of Michigan. They assembled it during the winter and surprised everyone in the summer and said, "Hey, look what we got now." So,
Dang, that is very cool.
Unique situation.
Yeah, that's crazy to build up there through the winter.
It is absolutely miserable up there. It is absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
But it turns out to be, which again, had property in the family 50 years, and I've only been there once in the winter, and it turns out to be it's like the ice fishing capital of the world. So wow. Right in our bay where we are, right where the house is, all the fish come from Lake Ontario into our bay to spawn during the winter and spring. And I just couldn't believe how many people rented the place in January, February, and March when it is miserably, miserably cold.
Dang, so, that's a huge success story right there.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, with all that success came a lot of heartache because, like I said, no one ever uses the house, and no one, especially in the winter. So we didn't realize the problems we had in the winter. The first one was the drain tiles clogged, so the basement flooded. We didn't know that. Then the well, it gets so cold, the well freezes. Okay. And that's a problem. And then the big one was the septic system that was built was built very poorly, and the ground up there is clay. So and again, across the street from my house is fields, so just farmland. So you got this massive amount of water underground that flushes from the fields towards the lake, goes into my septic tank and fills it, and then backs it up into my house. So on multiple different weekends, being 400 miles away, there was phone calls at midnight. Hey, you got sewage coming up from the showers. The basement's flooding. I have no water. So I'll tell you, my first couple months of this, doing it all on my own, being 400 miles away, was incredibly, incredly stressful. And
so what do you do in that situation? That sounds awful.
It's very awful. I was having up there, we put a new seawall in because a couple of years ago, the water was so high, it took away some of the land. So we built this enormous seawall. So I had my builder up there building it. I called him up when the basement was flooding. I called him up at midnight. He answers the phone, more amazingly, and runs over to my house, starts up the excavator, and digs up the line where the water should be flushing out from the basement. And he's like, "Sean, I did not block this up. There's something in this line that's blocking this." And sure enough, we dug it all up. It was just roots, the person who built the house did a lot of mistakes, and he never built a residential house before. So the piping he used was the wrong piping. Right. And so all these things happen every winter, for the last 25 years, but we've never known it because no one's ever up there. So the septic may overflow, but again, it just, by the time we get up there in the summer, it's gone. It recedes. And again, if you're not using the water in the house, it really won't overflow. But when there's people in there using the water and it's going into the septic tank, that's what causes everything to flood. And then like I said, the well freezing again. Never froze in the summer. So, and then the one bad thing was my one rental, the septic was my last straw, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went up there. They pumped the septic tank out 3 times in a row. And he's just like, listen, there's just so much water underground. It just keeps filling back in. So I had to call my next renter was coming up in 4 days, and he was driving from Michigan to do some ice fishing. And he was so bummed out. He was really, really bummed out. And I apologized. There's nothing I could do. And it turns out he's renting. He came up anyways. He found another place, and he's renting for 2 weeks in January and March, because he's like, I went when I was up there. I made sure I checked out your house, and we loved it. So we want to rent it, and so we're gonna go 2 weeks this time. I'm like, perfect. So
that's a way cool story, and it sounds like you've learned way more about your own home than you ever bargained for.
It is amazing. Since I was 3 years old, we would go up there all the time when we were younger, every weekend when my dad was building the house with my grandfather. And the only thing I knew when I went up there is I had to work. And even to this date, I was up there this weekend because I had to stain the cedar deck, the second floor cedar deck. We had to fix a part on the boat lift. There's just a million little things that you have to do to take care of it. And again, I don't mind it because this place means a lot to me. So I go up there, and I am, from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, I'm fixing things, doing things, improving it. And really, in essence, all I really want to do is make this house really, really nicer, and keep it, I would love for my family to use it a lot more, but again, it's pretty far away for a lot of people. And so, they don't use it as much. And again, I used it, I think I was up there 12 days, and all 12 days I was up there this year, I worked fixing something, the boat, fixing the dock, just everything but again, you're asking your question, what do you do? I panic. I call a 24-hour plumber who's on call. I call my landscaper, who's a great guy, and he'll do anything for me. He actually was the one that went out and cleaned the shower floors that have all the septic overflow in it. He's a great guy. And my next door neighbor, who is retired, and we're really good friends. She keeps an eye on things. She was actually my original cleaning lady. And she was actually the one, because back in last September, I decided, hey, listen, I'm going to throw this up there. She's like, all right, well, let me go in. And like I said, it was not ready to rent. There's just so many things you got to do to get it up and ready. And I said, listen, whatever it takes, go in there, all new sheets, all new towels, duplicates of everything, pots and pans, all this stuff that kind of we needed to upgrade and do. And she did. I mean, she spent weeks doing everything, and she loved it. She really enjoyed it, because I told her, I said, spare no expense. Yeah. And which is great too. So if I need like toilet paper or something, I can just, on Amazon, I'll just send it to her address, my next door neighbor, and she just throws it in the house for me. So
is that because from what I could tell looking at your listing, it looks like it's self-managed, but you kind of have somewhat of a team on call out there since you're so far away, but it's not like a proper property management team. I guess, how did you pull that together? Because that almost seems more difficult to have multiple people rather than like my one point of contact, which is my property management company.
It was difficult, but now I have I had 5 rentals in September. I did not get one phone call. It was great. Not one phone call. And when they text me, I text back immediately, and I try to establish a relationship with every single person that rents it, and lets them know, hey, this house is very special to me, so please take care of it. And I said, enjoy it. Hopefully you enjoy it just as much as I do. But so, yeah, at first it was difficult. but with my neighbor, she's 65 and she was my cleaning lady. And she came to me back in January and she said, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot. And I ended up finding a cleaning lady that's phenomenal. And I charge $200 to clean it because it sleeps 15 and there's a lot of beds, four bathrooms. So there's a lot of towels. And I said, listen, it's $200 for cleaning fee. If you get done cleaning it in an hour, it's $200. If it takes you 4 hours, it's $200. It takes you 8 hours, it's $200. And she's totally fine with it. And it's worked out great. And she'll text me. It's like, listen, house looks great. And she also takes the garbage for me too. They put them in the garbage cans outside, and then she takes the garbage from the cleaning lady does. My landscaper, which is guy just cuts my lawn. He's been doing it for the last 20 years and he's a great guy and he'll do anything for me. So, and I take care of him and then really I just do everything else. And again, once you get it up and running, it works.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the biggest pro of being in the short-term rental market?
Obviously the last year, the rentals were great. It was, I made enough money to reinvest in the house. Actually, I spent way, way more than what I made, but obviously the cash flow pays the taxes, pays for all these upgrades to the house, I'll just keep on doing. So that's kind of probably the best one,
Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, that's probably the goal for most people is like, especially since it's like a family home that right now you're just paying the bills anyway, right? It's not like you bought this property to make more money. It's like you already had the home. It was just taking money. And now you're like, well, now I can make my home and my property more enjoyable for me when I go out there, when my family potentially will go out there in the future, and other people are helping to pay those bills.
I guess the one other benefit, which is, to me, it's a benefit because I've always said for years, this house needs to be lived in. Like my dad, after he built it, for the first 22 years said, we're not shutting this house down. In the winter, I keep it open, keep the heat going. There's months where the bill was $3,000 to heat the place. And I'm like, Dad, this is crazy. So I shut it down for a couple of years before we started renting it. But then I realized like it's actually nicer not to have to shut it down. If people are in there using the place, making sure the water's running, the heat's on, I manage the heat and the air conditioning. I have it on an app. Same thing with the door. I have the lock on the doors on an app. I don't have a camera, but I'll eventually get around to getting one. But having people in there, it needs to be lived in. If you only use a house a couple times a year, it's just like a car. If a car sits in your driveway too long, you're bound to have having problems. But you drive it every day, it's going to last you 15 years.
Yep. No, that's awesome. What about your bookings? I know you said most of your bookings you do through Airbnb, and some people want to take it off Airbnb, but you keep it in Airbnb. Are you also on other platforms like VRBO or anything, or you're just like, I'm just sticking with Airbnb?
Yeah, it's already enough for me to manage all it anyway. So keeping it on one is just keeps it simple. And so far, Airbnb's done well by me. And at times I fought with the app, but you kind of play with the app long enough, you figure out all the little intricacies of it, and figure out, the calendar and how you want certain dates to be rented, like a minimum 3 days or minimum 7 days type thing. So again, trial and error. It's amazing. You just got to keep working at it and figure it all out.
Cool. And then you also mentioned that you like to build a relationship with the guests that are coming out and like say, hey, take care of this home. It means a lot to me. I guess, what do you feel like is key or crucial in trying to get a 5-star review?
Well, I went out of my way when we set it up to make sure, like, people have told me, hey, you don't need to put sheets in the house. You don't need to give them towels. I'm like, I said, that's the craziest thing in the world. And then, so not only that, I made sure I had nice sheets, nice comforters, all brand new beds. Also, I have coffee pods there for them, so they don't have to scramble out the first morning they get there to go get stuff. I got creamers, I got sugar, just little things like that. I think and again, when they text me or with a question, it's like, again, I get the notification right on my phone. So, and then Airbnb makes a little noise, a unique noise on my phone. So I know it's Airbnb. So, just like Pavlov's dog, I got to look at it immediately. So I think that, and then again, there's been also special situations where people have to cancel or change their things, and little things like that. And I've, been incredibly accommodated because, I understand, like, things happen. So, it's what it is.
Do
So.
you wish you would have gotten started earlier? Like, you've had the home for so long, and it sounds like it hasn't been heavily used in the past, maybe 5-ish years, I guess, if I was just based on how you're talking about it. Do you wish you would have got started 5 years ago or earlier, or you're like, no, the timing just worked out for me?
It worked. Yes, I wish I did. However, there was a huge impediment, which was my dad, and he absolutely refused to do something like that. He wouldn't even consider it. And God knows he wouldn't have worked to get it to do it. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, actually, and 2.5 years ago. And all the bills were kind of falling on me. And that's what really motivated me. I'm like, all right, enough is enough. I'm paying all these bills. No one's using it. And my siblings really don't have, people don't have a lot of extra money just to pay for another upkeep of another house. So I think I could have started it a couple of years ago. Do I wish we started like 5 years ago? Yeah, because there's been just a lot of deferred maintenance with the house. Even though it's relatively new, there's always things to fix and do. And it's, so yes, I wish I did, but I'm glad I finally got around to doing it, at least.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is like the thing you wish you would have known when you got started that you now know?
Well, I wish I knew more about my house, which is obviously something stupid on my part, but I was under the assumption I didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
Figured that out. And then, to be honest with you, I wish I knew it wasn't going to be so difficult. It's really not. If you got a good house, you got, like I said, I got my next door neighbor that just keeps an eye on it. And I've in all my rentals this last year, I've never had a problem. There's never been any issues outside of, the septic tank and the water freezing, but all the renters, it's pretty plug and play. So I wish I had started early because once you get it up and running, it's actually pretty easy. It runs itself.
Yeah, no, that's cool. How do you set your pricing? Are there like a lot of other rentals up there like they're similar to yours that you can base it off of, or kind of how do you do that?
Well, last year when I put it up there, I actually put it up relatively cheap. And I kind of priced it a little bit above other rentals in the area. Well, and I was only doing it because I'm like, all right, first time, let's see what happens. And sure enough, I rented. I had 5 rentals in November, and there's nothing going on up there in November. I had 4 different rentals in the last 12 days of December last year. And again, the lake's not even frozen yet to do ice fishing at that time of year. And so it was priced really cheap, and I was really pricing it versus all the other places. But up there, there are a lot of cottages. This is a home that has 4 bedrooms and 4 baths. Also has 3 sets of bunk beds in the loft, so the house is, it's 3,000 square feet. So it's pretty big. It has enormous amount of deck space out front. It has a campfire. It has a deck on the water. So it's pretty unique. My competition is nothing like this. There's not too many houses up there that have that kind of space that can accommodate big parties. So this year, I subsequently raised the prices. And be honest with you, I have not had nearly as many rentals, but I've also made it, instead of minimum 2-day rental, I made it 3 days, because I was just like, you know what? I don't need to have it rented, but I want to make it worth my while now. So, again, I'll have to adjust the pricing going forward. I actually was on in the account the other day looking at it, like, all right, I switched it back to 2-day minimum. And I kind of tweaked the pricing a little bit. But again, I knew I was really, really inexpensive, because even a lot of people said, listen, you're killing me, because your house is so, it's $300 a night, and I'm trying to get 200, but my place sleeps, 3 people, so, so it was pretty unique, it's a learning curve. I'll probably, like I said, adjust. Again, I don't know if it's a lot less people renting, but from my understanding, I have a real estate friend up there. She says there's definitely a lot more people putting their houses up on Airbnb. So the competition is definitely getting, there's a lot more competition. Again, my house is a little bit different than everything else up there. There's everything up there is cottages and camps. So it's not, there's some uniqueness to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you plan on playing with the price a bit, or you're kind of like, no, I would rather have less rentals? Because actually I rent out my Jeep, and I kind of feel the same way. I use Turo, and I'm
Sure.
like, I don't want this thing I really don't want to rent it out, but I'm like, but it is expensive, and I can offset some of those costs. So if I can have a high price, I can rent it out to someone, and I'm like, okay, that was totally worth it that someone's willing to pay that much for a day or a weekend or whatever. So in my opinion, I've kind of been leaning on the side of, hey, I don't get that many rentals, but when I get them, they're extremely valuable, and it's totally worth it. But I've been toying with the idea of dropping my price.
Yeah, yes, I will. I raised it quite a bit. But again, I thought I raised it from a very low base versus last year. So yeah, I'm going to tweak it just so, yeah, definitely will tweak it, and I already have. So, but again, if it doesn't rent every weekend, I'm fine with it. It's, again, it's kind of one less thing that I have to worry about. But again, my goal for the house was really just to cover the expenses, and also have some extra money to do upgrades, buy new furniture, buy new deck furniture, buy a boat lift, little things like that. So yeah, I'm not doing it to really make money. It's definitely not the point of it at all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about, I know this is kind of unique to you, and definitely not where I thought this conversation was going to go, but you mentioned this at the very beginning, that you also have other real estate, and it sounds like it's more the long-term real estate. What would you recommend, where you're like, hey, I do recommend, like, what do you think is better for cash flow? What would you recommend to someone in their like late 20s, early 30s trying to get into the real estate space?
So my properties that I have in Ohio, they're all single family homes, with monthly rents. It is a full-time job. We have 60 homes between my twin brother and my best friend. And my best friend manages it all, and he's very, very good at it. My twin brother and I've never even seen the houses, to be honest with you. So, but if you got to be prepared to either make sure your partner is full-time, because it's a lot of work. It's definitely, and you got to really know the market, like when to buy, what price point doesn't work. Especially, and there's always going to be more expenses. We got lucky I think even through, in the last 5 years, we've probably 98% rental, very little vacancy. Because we manage the house pretty well. People like it. We're very responsive. If you're going to do it, and if you really want to get into it, it's a lot more work than you think. And it's just like anything. I always say it's a young man's game. So if you're young, go ahead and, make your way with it. But, I'm 53 going on 54. Would I want to manage the day-to-day stuff of all that housing and rentals? No. Having this one in New York, where my house is up there, and the Airbnb is fine, because it kind of manages itself. So it's a lot of work.
So is your best friend, is he a property manager then? Or is it like just he turned into a property manager because he started helping you with your homes and it just kind of got too much and he just took that on?
He actually turned into a property manager because we just kept on buying more homes. And we had a full-time employee, someone that was responsible for finding homes for us, fixed maintenance, collecting rent. And he wasn't the best. And my buddy, we got enough homes, so it created a full-time job for him, basically. So we created that job. It created itself just as we grew. So, and you definitely, having someone, it's a lot of management. We have 60 LLCs, so it's a lot to manage. It's a lot of paperwork. You gotta do evictions. Like in Ohio, they have this lead paint thing now, which, everyone says you get lead poisoning because people are chewing on the baseboards of your house, which is ridiculous. But so now there's a lot of moving parts to real estate investing, that's for sure. And the glory of it all, people, you see these, some of these people who have made enormous amounts of money in it. A lot of those people are in markets where you've had continuous price improvements. Whereas, like in Ohio, where I am in Cleveland, our housing prices really are been pretty stagnant for 25 years. They haven't moved. So you got to make sure you're buying it at the right price, because a lot of real estate, the real estate investors buy on leverage, borrow a lot of money, and they're not buying it necessarily for the cash flow. They're buying it for the appreciation plus the cash flow. And in a lot of areas of the United States, like Arizona, huge price appreciation, obviously New York, certain parts of New York, New Jersey, so, a lot of people, when you're using leverage and you have price appreciation, you can do it really, really well. And again, leverage works the opposite way too. So, get to be careful.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with me.
Yeah, no problem. If you ever got any questions, give me a ring, and I appreciate you reaching out.